Welcome to the Sunrise Life podcast, where we have deep conversations with fellow freelance models. And today I have Jay Ban on the line, and Jay Ban has also been in previous episode where we did an interview going down the rabbit hole on her career and everything. But I saw her post something on Facebook the other day about the fashion industry, and I was like, this is a super interesting concept, and it relates to all of us traveling models, so we should do a podcast episode about it. So thank you so much for being down.
Absolutely. I was really excited when you reached out and asked if we could make a podcast about this, and so yeah, definitely really happy, excited to do this.
Yeah, can you describe for me when you first got into modeling, your relationship with the outfits that you were using and how that has morphed over time?
Yeah. So starting off modeling, I started off nude from the start, but definitely photographers have always wanted little cute outfits like lingerie or heels or just sheer clothing and stuff like that. So in the beginning, I didn't really I've always been a thrifter, so always been shopping for thrift stuff since I'm young. So knew that was an option, but I also would always kind of just go through my sister's closet because we were still living in the same household at the time. So borrowing a lot of my sister's stuff.
Older sister or younger sister?
Older sister, yeah. So some cool stuff there. So yeah, definitely raiding her closet and taking whatever I thought could look cool in a shoot, or just trying to come up with the pieces that I already had and making them look different in different shoots and stuff like that. Or of course, thrifting has always been a really go-to thing for me. It's a lot more affordable for one. I being a young model, I didn't have a lot of money to go shopping and buy new things all the time. So thrifting was always a really great option because you can find great brand names, sometimes things with tags still on them that someone owned at some point but never even wore and just gave to a thrift store. So that's kind of how I got around in the beginning. And then as years went on, I guess meeting lots of other models, making friends with people. And in the last few years, well, I don't know, I would say from the a good, it's been a while, but I have some friends that are really generous with their clothing. So when they're done wearing stuff and they're getting rid of it, they'll give me a lot of their old used clothing. And I have no shame. I know some people maybe aren't for it. I know not everyone's big on thrifting and stuff, but I have no shame in reusing things. I think it's awesome. I actually get really excited when I can repurpose something and I think wow, someone got rid of this and I actually love it. And some of my favorite pieces of clothing or lingerie actually have come from friends who have given it to me. So
Wow, so you've already been kind of on the thrifty track with reusing clothing from the beginning.
Oh yeah, definitely. I grew up with a thrifting mom. She bought a lot of things. We would go secondhand clothing store shopping from the time I was 5 years old that I can remember. So definitely I have always been a thrifter. It's always been in my system.
Yeah. So I've been into thrifting in my life as well. However, I've got confessions to make. I have, over the course of my younger life, I have shopped at Forever 21 and H&M, and I've bought stuff online from Yandy and yeah, I did a lot of that earlier in my career, and I was just like, oh, this is great. I can get a bikini for $3.99. I don't care if it takes 30 days to ship. I'm on a budget. So that was how I started. And it's kind of interesting because when you talk about fashion, it is a loaded topic. There's definitely a lot of people outside of the indie model community that would look at thrift shopping with a sideways glance, as if it's cheap or whatever. However, I'm all about getting creative and recycling stuff. But what do you think about the fashion industry in general when it comes to having a sideways eye on thrifting or reusing clothing from other people?
I think that it's too bad. I don't really know where that comes from, but also maybe I'm a bit biased in saying that because I grew up on thrifting and my family was always on a budget. Like, so buying brand new things for me was not always an option. So, but I can maybe like, I try to understand why people are not open-minded to like buying secondhand things and like, I guess maybe I don't know if they think it's dirty or it's unsanitary to be wearing something that like a stranger wore, or like if you're thrift shopping, like maybe you think the clothing's, I'm not really sure where it comes from. So I do think it's unfortunate because I think there's a lot of great things in thrift stores. And like I said, things that haven't even been worn sometimes. Like, yeah, I found tons of things with tickets and labels and tags still on them. So I would like people to realize maybe that thrifting isn't so bad. It's not dirty. It's not disgusting. I mean, yeah, you might find some like cringy stuff sometimes that you're like, ooh, like I probably wouldn't buy that, but you don't have to buy everything and anything, and you can sort through stuff and find really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've really seen like an episode of MTV Cribs or two where the celebrity on the whatever show they're doing on that particular day brags about how they never wear the same pair of shoes twice, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, or like they'll wear a t-shirt and then throw it out, or like, oh, I don't wash my socks, I'll just wear them and throw them out, like kind of thing. Yeah, that breaks my heart. I'm like, I have a hole in my sock and I'm like, maybe I can just sew it.
Yeah, totally. My sock collection is, I mean, don't look at it.
I know, I get laughed and I'm like you have a hole in your sock. I think it's time to, maybe get a new pair. And I'm like, no, but I like these socks. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have like emotional connections with various clothing items. I have this Pink Floyd shirt that I actually got from a thrift store that I think actually came from like one of their old concerts. It's literally got holes all over it and it's ripping apart, but I just love it.
Oh,
I don't know why.
that's super cool. You see, but like, I think that's awesome. Like I've even seen people like turn profits off selling thrifted stuff. So I don't know if you've ever heard of like Poshmark, or
Yeah.
there's like other apps and stuff like that where people will resell old outfits, old clothing. And some people went as far as to even keep all their like millennial outfits. So literally had boxes and boxes of stuff and then went on Poshmark and resold a bunch of stuff. And I guess millennial clothing kind of came back into fashion. I'm not really like good at following the trends and stuff, but I think this was like in the last year or two that people started like looking for those juicy outfits or looking for like those layered tank tops with like the frillies on the bottom, and would pay like extra money just to have those old styles of clothing. So
Yeah. The grunge era and also the 90s is also coming back with like the flannel
yeah.
shirts and stuff.
Exactly. So I think that's really cool that some people have been able to like repurpose some of the old stuff. And I can't think of other ones. I know there's other ones aside from Poshmark. I think Poshmark is maybe more in the US, but there was some in Canada. I tried hopping on those and wasn't really, I didn't always love the idea because sometimes people were interested in buying something and then it's like, well, you're all the way in the US and then I'm going to have to ship this there. And then there's like the carbon footprint too.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, I didn't love it. But I'm thinking maybe if you're in the States, like in the US and you're already selling within the US, like maybe it's not as bad. Or like sometimes I've had people want to buy stuff and I'm like it doesn't make sense to drive all the way there to like sell them these jeans. And then like, so I'm like, oh, maybe like at some point when I can meet them at a metro station and I'm in the area where it makes more sense and I'm already going there for something else. So I'm not just making a trip and adding that carbon footprint to when I'm trying to do something good and repurpose something and not affect the planet.
Oh man, tell me about it. Like, I've thought about this as well. Like, if I were to try to make every aspect of my life perfectly ethical, like I would basically have to just live in the forest without a house, Like you
Yeah,
gotta
I
pick your
think
battles, I think
absolutely.
it's good to find something that you believe in and then root for it. And I think that when it comes to like the clothing that we wear when we're modeling, I feel like that has a really strong resonation with me because if it's my career, like the items of clothing that I'm wearing that basically support my career, like the things that are touching my body that are being photographed with me wearing them, that there's a lot tied up in that. Like there's an energy And I know that you saw a documentary recently that made an impact on you. I also saw a documentary about how the fast fashion industry works and, you know, ways to get around the fast fashion industry and at least do your part to like have a less of an impact on what's happening within that industry and its impact on the environment and not just the environment but like the workers and the people that live in the cities where some of these factories are.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we're all probably a little bit guilty somewhere. Like we all buy stuff and sometimes it's not to say we never need new things. Like we do need new things sometimes. Like I'm not going to buy a secondhand toothbrush, let's say, or like
Right.
there's just certain things or like even like used underwear. Like there's some things that like maybe if it's coming from a friend or something, I'm not opposed to it. Like if a friend's giving me like old lingerie and I know who it's coming from, but there's definitely things that we want to buy new, but there's ways of doing that that's more, I guess, environmentally friendly and doesn't have such a big impact on the environment. Because like you said, there's a lot of things that come into account when like there's the making of the clothing. I think I was looking, so I was actually using my school library to find like articles and stuff like that to find like more facts and stuff because I was like, well, might as well use my education and use some of these articles. And there was actually a lot of really interesting articles. So one of them was just talking about like how much water it takes to make a t-shirt. And so it's like anywhere from like 200 liters to like 2,700 liters, depending on the material. I think the worst is cotton, if I recall when I was reading. That's like 2,700 liters, which is 714 gallons of water
For
for a
one
t-shirt.
t-shirt.
Yeah, that's what I was reading in the article. And then there's so the water that they need for like the actual cotton cultivation. And then that doesn't even take into account, like you said, like there's the chemical effects on like the people living in that city or just like a lot of things that come into account. Or like, is it ethically being made? Like who's making the clothing? Who's working for these companies? Like, yeah, so there's a lot of negative things when you're realizing like, oh well, where did this shirt come from? Or where did like it's really sad when you think like that's a lot of water for one shirt and then you could just go to a thrift store and buy a shirt that's already been made, that's already maybe served a purpose to somebody else and you can repurpose it and you're saving that water in a sense. Not saying these places won't still be making clothing, but if less of us are buying it, then I think they'll like less demand. So of course they're going to have to make less of it because there's not as many of us looking for new shirts or new pants or new dresses or like the latest fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the documentary that I saw, and I'm gonna have to look this up and cite it in the sources because it was a while ago, like 2015 that I saw this, but they were talking about countries in like Bangladesh and in India and places like that where a lot of these fast fashion items are manufactured and sourced. The factories like are using chemicals that are harmful to the people that live in the town and it poisons their water source. And one of the countries, I think it was Bangladesh if I remember correctly, but a lot of the people that lived in the town, not just people that worked in the factory, but people living there were being born with health defects, like having multiple limbs and stuff as a side effect of the harsh chemicals that they're using to like dye leather and things like that.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. People
That's
being born crippled because of side effects from these chemicals. And it's like so that you can get a t-shirt that's like 78 cents cheaper than like the cheapest one that you can find at the store at your home, you know.
yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah, so
I think
that made an impact on me.
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of really interesting documentaries out there, and I think the one I watched was more recent. It was on Netflix called I think Buy Now. And so if anybody wants to watch that, it is very informative and it does kind of open your eyes up a little bit and maybe makes you question like, do I really need to buy this? Like I don't think everyone's gonna stop buying from like places like that are promoting fast fashion. But I think if we can just do better and like repurposing what we are buying, or just like rethinking and asking ourselves, like, do I really need this new t-shirt, or do I just want it? Or like, is it absolutely necessary? Or can I maybe go to a thrift store and find the same thing? Or can I maybe go to a friend's place and raid their closet and borrow something of theirs? Or there's definitely other ways we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and how long ago was it that you found out about like the impacts of the fast fashion industry?
Ooh, I'm not sure. It's been a while. I like reshared a post I had on Facebook a little while ago, and I think that was from, not 100% sure, but like 2017 or 2018, where I was basically encouraging people to go thrift shopping and like showing off my outfit and how you can get really nice outfits in a thrift store, and like, I got all this and it's all thrifted kind of thing. So I want to say I've always been aware, I guess, that not, I don't want to say always, because that's obviously we learn at some point, but I think I've always been aware that like buying brand new things isn't the greatest for the environment. And at
Yeah.
first I didn't realize it was the clothing itself. At first I was thinking more of like the packaging or like the carbon footprint. And then when I realized like, wow, it really does go as far as to like the way we make the clothing or the material we're using, or
Yeah.
even what happens with the clothing after. Like we think we're doing really good sometimes by bringing everything to like thrift stores, and definitely it's a good thing. Thrift stores do resell some of this stuff, but sometimes they can't resell everything. Like not everything that ends up in a thrift store is going to be wanted by somebody and end up in a second home. So a lot of this stuff does get shipped on containers, and you think like, oh, well, that's really great. Like you might be helping other countries have clothing that they might need, or like, and a lot of it, I think one of the countries was in Africa. A lot of people in Ghana they get a lot of containers shipped there. And you think like, oh, that's great. They can repurpose it. And there is a huge business out in these countries for like secondhand reused clothing. But a lot of the time they get shipped stuff that isn't even reusable. So it's like basically clothing that doesn't really have a life anymore, like full of holes or like armpit stains or other stains. Or sometimes it's not even clothing that's like appropriate for their weather. So like they get winter jackets or winter sweaters or like these like thick, bulky things that they don't really need this kind of clothing in these hot, warmer climates and countries. So then you're thinking like, oh, well, great. We just sent a whole bunch of useless clothing. So that's another carbon footprint that gets shipped to another country and they don't
Yeah.
even need it, or it's not even useful for them. So
Yeah. As you were talking, I was looking up some statistics about this. I see here, according to a quick Google search, the fast fashion industry produces an estimated 92 million tons every year.
oh, that's brutal.
Of 92 million tons of waste from the fast fashion industry.
Brutal.
That's a lot. It's hard to kind of like imagine like what size of mountain that is.
Yeah, that's insane. Have you ever been to like the back store of a secondhand store? They're pretty intense. Like, I don't even know how people can like sort through this amount of clothing sometimes. I'm just like, that's insane. Like piles and piles and piles, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah. So also 2.5 million tons of clothing go to be recycled. However, only 12% of them end up actually getting recycled. And they are often downcycled to be used as rags and rather than being reused as clothing. So that's interesting. And that's recycled as opposed to repurposed, and according
Right.
to this article.
Because yeah, with purpose, I guess there's other things people can do. Like I've heard of people using old clothing as like insulation. I've even seen some people use like old teddy bears and stuff like that as insulation, or making like back in the day, I feel like there was a lot less waste. Like, you know, like the grandmas that would like, oh, let me take all these old pieces of material and make a quilt blanket for like my granddaughter that's going to be born soon. Or like, I feel like we don't repurpose things like as much as we used to, or reuse things as much as we used to. Kind of wish we could be more like back in the day where
Yeah.
fast fashion wasn't so fast, and you know, just like more classic styles.
As you were mentioning before, there are piles and piles and piles of rejected clothing in overseas countries that they're piled up. Some people go through them and try to salvage them and then resell them. There's like people that run their own businesses and do that. But a lot of them that are piled up for a long, long time, it takes a long time for this to break down, but it releases like toxic fumes also.
Oh yeah, like as the clothing decomposes over time kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. It's just like one negative thing after another when you think about it. Like I don't always think of all the little like details, but it's like, dang, just like making clothing is bad.
Yeah. Like, how much of it do you really need? But there's so many people that make their like brand on TikTok or whatever about like, try on hauls with Shein clothing, or like, look at these like cheap, cute clothes that I got and I'm just going to try them all on for this video that I got sponsored for, and then go on to the next try on haul video. Try on haul videos, they're viral content. Like, I've made plenty of try on haul videos of my own, and I think there's a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok that specifically are searching for try on haul videos because they're entertaining and they're fun, and it helps drive traffic to other stuff that you're doing online, whether that be advertising your modeling services or driving traffic to your Patreon page or whatever. But there's definitely an allure to try on hauls, and I can understand why people want to get the cheapest things possible if that's like their main thing.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool if people could do try on hauls with thrifted stuff? Like, I know it doesn't work the same because you're not going to be like sponsored, or like I know some of these people sometimes you'll get sent like a new lingerie outfit so that you can kind of promote them, or like there's all different kinds of things like that. But I think it would be so cool if we could do try on hauls with thrifted clothing and just kind of brag about like,
Yeah.
oh look, I got this and it was super cheap and I thrifted it and you can do it too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I know that I've seen thrift try on hauls before, but it's not as rampant and viral as the cute new clothing items for sure.
yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's like I said before, sometimes it's like you're buying lingerie and stuff, and it's not always something that you might want to get secondhand. So I can definitely get that not everybody wants to thrift just everything and anything.
Yeah.
But that's when it's nice if you have like a group of friends, or like especially models. Like there's so many of us, and I can't remember, it might have been you or it might have been another model in one of the Facebook groups that was like, oh, can we like all meet up together and like do like a clothing swap party or something like that? That is such a good idea. Like, I just have a couple of friends that we kind of meet up and we'll like bring back like garbage bags of clothing or just little bags of clothing, whatever we're getting rid of at the time. And just like we'll swap the bags and we'll each all go through it. But I think it could be so much better, like the bigger, like larger groups of people, because sometimes it's a matter of like, oh, well, my friend's not the same size as me, so I can't really borrow her clothing, or I can't really take her old clothing because it won't fit me, or just
Yeah.
like, I think the more people, the better, because then everyone could hopefully find something that they liked that they traded in something else for that they weren't using, and
Yeah.
so everybody can come out with something.
Yeah, I think that for me, I got that idea from going to group shoots in the past. Like, I don't know if it doesn't really happen anymore, but there was a group called the Arizona Shootout, and a ton of models and photographers would get together for a whole weekend, and the models would get booked. They would just independently book hourly shoots with various photographers, but all the models were staying in the same hotel. And like, oftentimes we would communicate in advance, like, hey, you guys want to have a wardrobe swap in like room number 212, after everyone was done shooting, and people would show up with their, items that they wanted to swap and just kind of explode the whole room with outfits, and you could just kind of pick around and find stuff that fits you that you liked. And that, honestly, those group shoots, there's a lot of GWCs, but the silver lining was that we all got to connect with each other, and the wardrobe swaps just were kind of an icing on the cake.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I kind of wish, I mean, not to say that there's no group shootouts here. I guess it's been a while, but it's something that did happen. But no, I guess I've never really seen like larger groups of people getting together and swapping clothes like that. I think it's a genius idea. And I think I'm going to try to figure out a way to get something like that going here at some point. That would be really cool.
I love wardrobe swaps. Like, are there any other group shoot events that you've participated in, whether they're local or like NINPAR or whatever?
What was the second word you said? Local or what?
NINPAR, the Nudes in Nature something something retreat.
Oh, okay, no. So I've never heard of that before,
Oh
actually.
man. Yeah, honestly, like, I'm not gonna edit this out. I heard that the guy that runs it is a douchebag, and if he's listening, like, I heard you're a douchebag.
No.
But so I haven't gone, but there's a lot of models that go to it, and it is kind of similarly run to how the Arizona Shootout was run. Basically, a weekend event with a bunch of models and photographers, and models book shoots over the course of the weekend with the photographers who are there. Yeah, so it's on the East Coast, which is another reason why I haven't really gone to it, because it's really far from where I usually hang around.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely. I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of, it doesn't seem to be like a popular thing here, or maybe I maybe participated more in shootouts and stuff like that when I was a beginner model and was doing like more TFP and trade and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
can't say they're not happening anymore, but maybe I'm just not in that crowd anymore because I don't do as much TFP or very seldom. So but I will keep my eye out for that. Like I definitely know a lot of photographers that do TFPs and stuff and sometimes just getting all these people together and being like you said, just hey, you guys want to bring some clothing, stuff you don't wear, and we can hang out after and just swap stuff and look through stuff, and like you bring stuff and you can walk away with new stuff, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then anything that doesn't get taken at the wardrobe swap can just be donated to a thrift store.
Exactly. I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
There's like other things. So I'm in Montreal and there's like a really great Facebook group that one of my friends introduced me to a couple years ago. I think it's genius. So it's basically everyone and anyone that has stuff that they're getting rid of or is open to taking other people's used stuff can be in this group. And people will do clean outs of like their closets, their pantries, their beauty products, like just about anything you can think of. Like I've gotten things from like shampoo and conditioner to like a bicycle to like furniture to like tons and tons of clothing that I've been able to use for photo shoots. And I just think it's really genius. Like just being able to reuse things that other people don't have a purpose for. Like sometimes it's something as silly as like, oh, they went to Costco and they bought too much chicken and they don't have room in the freezer, so they're giving like drumsticks away. Or like sometimes it's like, oh, well, I have a whole bunch of like shampoo, conditioner, hairspray, stuff I tried and I didn't like it, so I'm getting rid of. And I don't know like how hard it is to create a group in a community because I'm not the one who made this group. I was just fortunately invited to it. But I feel like it can't be too difficult, and you just sort of start a group and you invite some people you know and you tell them like, hey, if you know anybody that might be interested in this group, you can invite them. And then it kind of just grows from there. And then I
Yeah.
think this group has like hundreds of people that are just trading things all the time or giving things away.
Yeah.
I think it's genius. Like I've saved a lot of money. I haven't had to buy shampoo and conditioner in a while now because of this group. So
Yeah.
like I'm not one of those people that's picky for like product brand names and stuff. So I'm like, ah, whatever. Like I'll use Tresemme and then like Pantene Pro V like the following month if I have to. I'm not really fussy. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a group here in Arizona called the Buy Nothing group where people just post things up that they're about to get rid of, and if you want it for free, you can just go pick it up.
oh, that's genius. That's really cool. I love that. Like a curbside pickup or
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
because what I used to do when I first started getting rid of clothing, and I don't know if the US has this, I think they would, but you drive around sometimes and you just see those like big blue bins, or here they're blue anyways, most of the time. And it's just like big bins for clothing. So
Yeah.
you can put garbage bags of clothing. And so, but after I stopped doing that, because then I heard that a lot of these bins will sit there for a long time full, and a lot of the clothing and stuff that's in these bins will actually end up getting like moldy, and then they don't get picked up, and then it's not really reusable. So then I was kind of like, well, that now I feel like crap for bringing all these garbage bags of clothing to these bins, thinking it's getting repurposed when maybe like 50% of the time it just sits there all winter, and then they're picking up a bunch of moldy stuff that they end up throwing out anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I started thinking like, well, giving it to my friends and stuff is better, and then bringing it like directly to thrift stores or bringing it to churches sometimes. Like I've even gone to like church bazaars like and brought stuff, and
Oh, that's cool.
it's a lot of people that are in need sometimes too. Like especially like we've been getting a lot of refugees that will come to Canada sometimes, and they don't have a lot of things to start off with. So sometimes it's just like, oh, like extra dishes or just like random things, furniture, bedding, like just random things that you might want to get rid of and instead of bringing it to like a thrift store, maybe trying to think of like a better way. Because thrift stores aren't bad. I'm not saying it's a bad place to bring your clothing. It's just that I think they can get really overwhelmed with all the excess clothing.
Yeah.
They can't sell everything. So sometimes we got to think of like more creative ways to pass off our old stuff if we're not going to use it anymore.
Yeah, and honestly, if it's like lingerie or whatever, like oftentimes, like, I mean, I've seen lingerie at Goodwill and stuff, like, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that it's a high priority selling item. Like, a lot of people don't buy stuff like that from there. So it's kind of like
Exactly.
a tricky one, which is why I am all about the wardrobe swaps. I feel like, I just wash my friend's stuff. Like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I'm like, I know who it's been on. I'm not too concerned about that. Like,
Yeah,
and when it's like, I'd say for the most of us models don't even wear sexy lingerie, like outside of modeling. Like, I would say most of
exactly.
the sexy lingerie that I have is really just for my photo shoots.
Yeah,
So I wear it for all of 10, 15 minutes for a set and then
yeah.
so it doesn't really get all that dirty. So you're just like a wash, like a pre-care before you give it on to the next person. Or
Oh, yeah.
if you want to be sure when someone gives you their old stuff and you want to wash it to be sure, like that's totally cool too.
Yeah, nobody wants a snail trail. Um,
Exactly.
so I have a few like fun questions that I want to ask you, but before I get into the fun questions, I did want to nail down a few more key points onto why buying the newest, cheapest trends from fast fashion places like Shein and Victoria's Secret and Forever 21 and all that is bad. Just because we have covered some of that, but I want to make sure that like we drive it home. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we did talk about the high water consumption that it takes to produce these new fashion items every other week, the chemical pollution and the impact that it has on the communities where the factories are and where the fabrics are sourced and dyed. And that obviously, along with that, there's greenhouse gas emissions and landfill waste. So that's all the environmental impact. We haven't really
Hmm.
talked as much about the social impact, like the people who are working in these factories and their working conditions.
Yeah.
The film that I watched way back was showing about a factory in China where people were forced to work up to 18 hours a day. Oftentimes they had underage minors working there without giving them proper breaks for food. People were literally dying in the factory. And there was an instance where one of these factories collapsed because they didn't take the safety precautions to make the building itself safe, and a lot of people died in the factory. So
That's really sad.
because when the industry is driven by, just providing the cheapest possible deals, the way that they provide those cheapest possible deals is by cutting costs everywhere down the line. And that goes down to the quality of the fabric and the quality of the production and the payment for the people working there.
Right. Like I think it's a lot of underaged people. And of course, sometimes you really need the money and you're going to work for less because that might be the only opportunity that you have to make money. So it is really sad how these people are treated and the working conditions, like safe working conditions, I think should be like the bare minimum. Like, and so working with all these chemical products and not having like the proper masks or the proper equipment to work and handle these kinds of materials and stuff. So it's definitely a very negative impact that it has on these people's healths or
Yeah.
lives overall. So
And that's definitely something that I took to heart when I was thinking, like, these clothing items are going on my body and I'm making money from photographers who are hiring me. So I used to have a disconnect where I was just like, oh, I'm getting a good deal. I'm making a living. Great. But once I learned where these clothing items were being sourced from, I just thought, like, who handled this item in the factory? Like, that was a human being over there, and now I am just nonchalantly flaunting around, like posing with it on my Instagram and on my Model Mayhem page. It just made me feel kind of like crappy, and from that point forward, I decided, this is starting in 2015, I didn't just like take everything out of my closet. It took a few years, honestly. I had a huge outfit closet for my modeling wardrobe. I just started, donating things here and there, passing them on to fellow models. And then the new items that I accumulated were coming from places like Etsy or hand-me-downs or thrift stores, like we've been talking about. So
I love that.
yeah, like over the course of time, I got rid of the stuff that I had ordered on Amazon or like bought at Forever 21.
Yeah. And Etsy is nice too because you can support local people and
Yeah.
have less of a carbon footprint if you're supporting local and buying local. And I just think it's better altogether because you know, for the most part, I would think things being sold on Etsy is ethically made and people are not taken advantage of and put in unsafe working conditions and stuff like that to be able to make these things. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a disclaimer to that also because when I was first getting into it, I was like, oh, all the Etsy stuff is handmade. And a lot of it is, but there's also a lot of people that have discovered that consumers will buy more from Etsy because they believe that it's handmade. So there are people that just buy shit off of Amazon and then resell it on Etsy. So you have to like really look at the product and make sure if it was handmade or not. Like there was a company, I forget what it was called, but they basically bought Amazon stuff and then like bedazzled it with like a few different like sequins. And then they said it was handmade because they modified it a little bit. But like, it was from Amazon. Like, come on.
That sucks. That sucks too because like how are you supposed to really know? Like I guess you could there's like maybe some things you can look at and might give you an idea, but how do you really know at the end of the day if something's handmade or not? And then that's just kind of ruining it for all the other people who are hand making things and taking the time and putting in all that extra effort. Like it can take so much longer when you're making things in one time. Like it's not a mass production. So it takes a lot more energy and a lot more time to put into making something handmade.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really sucks that some of these people are just ripping people off.
Yeah. What I've done when I'm shopping on Etsy, when I'm trying to find something that was legitimately handmade, is when you go to an Etsy page for like one of the shops, you can scroll down and like at the bottom of the page, you can see like a little about me for like, who handmade it, and you can see their bio. Like you can kind of tell like by how the person wrote their bio. If it says something like, me and my sister started this shop, when we were 18 and now it's been 6 years and we started working out of our garage and now, we have people helping us out and it's great. Like that sounds legit. But if it's like, we are bringing you the cheapest deals from around the world, you could tell that those are the ones that are
definitely.
not handmade.
Wow.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the questions that I was going to ask you, because these are like borderline ethical dilemmas that I've been presented with when, booking a shoot with a photographer, being at the shoot or whatever. Like you can do everything that you would like to, be ethical, source your stuff from thrift stores, get it handmade and all of that. But sometimes you get to a shoot and the photographer is like, oh, I have bought all of these outfits on Shine and I would like for you to wear this. And they were like, I want you to wear this Squirrel Girl costume that costs 99 cents from Shein. What do you do in that situation?
I won't say no. Like, I mean, obviously I won't say no because I'll still wear it, but I have definitely tried to convince photographers. Like I am like big on thrifting and I will brag about it and I have turned people into thrifters, recyclers, like everything. So I'll definitely bring it up to them and be like, hey, like maybe buying these brands isn't so great, and just kind of make them more aware of like what we've talked about on this podcast, like why it's not good for the environment and the people making these clothing and how they're treated and the poor working conditions and just the whole impact that it has on the planet. And I would say I've even convinced some photographers to go thrifting instead. So I think I don't want to like say I'm perfect. Like I've probably bought things from Shein before in the past. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But so I'm not gonna like make somebody feel bad for having an outfit that costs them less money. And maybe to them it's like, oh, well, I got cheap outfits and now I can afford to hire a model because I saved money on the outfits or something.
Yeah.
But I just want to like, I try to make them more aware that that's not the only way or the only place to get cool, cute, cheap outfits. Like
Yeah.
there's so many thrift stores, like so many thrift stores in certain areas. And I think thrifting has even become kind of more popular over the years. So there's like some kind of trendy thrift stores in Montreal these days. So yeah, I wouldn't say no, but I would just try to convince them and make them realize that there's other ways and other outfits you can buy and maybe
Yeah.
in more ethical ways of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Personally, oftentimes if the outfit came from like Yandy, does Yandy still exist? Does Forever 21 still exist, by the way? Am I old for referencing
I'm
the
not sure. I want to say yes, but I also haven't shopped at a Forever 21 in a long time, and I'm not actually familiar with Yandy, so that might be like an American brand store or something.
I don't know if it's American or not, but it's definitely like, pre-Sheen. It was like the 99-cent thongs. Like if you see those thongs that all look the same, that look like a Dorito with 3 strings that connect to it, that's Yandy. It's like super cheap, like the cheapest that it could get. And obviously on the pictures on their website, it looks all good, but then you put it on and it looks like, stupid. But
Kind of like maybe like our giant tigers or something. I'm not sure.
yeah, a lot of those items that come from the cheap websites don't fit me right. Like I'm super petite, like my torso is short. Almost every bodysuit that comes from a cheap stuff website is too long for my torso, and like, my proportions don't usually work with like the outfit items that come from shops like that. But when I buy higher quality stuff from an independent designer, like you can have a chat with them personally on Etsy and ask, hey, are these measurements going to work with this design? And they will tell you. So you could talk to an actual human that actually handmade it. It's kind of nice.
I love.
But personally, if I'm at a shoot and the photographer presents like a cheap outfit, like I'm kind of the same way. If I'm being hired, I'm being hired for their idea. If they premeditated the shoot with like the idea that they bought these outfits and they want me to wear them, I'll put them on, but I'll let them know it's probably going to fit me weird. And I'm probably not going to share this photo on my personal social media accounts because I don't promote like this, brand or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a tough love thing. Like as models, when we're hired, like if you have like a decent following, then sometimes photographers get upset if you don't accept their collaboration post. But
Yeah.
this is one of those reasons why I wouldn't accept one, is if you bought cheap stuff from a company that has really unethical practices. So
Yeah. And I absolutely know those like panties that you're talking about where they kind of fit, but then the crotch hangs like halfway down, like for your actual crotch. And then you're just like, well, this looks weird. Or like, yeah, definitely just those like really weird fitting outfits. And the material is really, really cheap. Like a lot of the time I would not be able to machine wash a lot of those lingerie. They would just get torn up or eaten in the machine. So definitely like hand washing, and even hand washing some of these things. Like after wearing it twice, let's say, you're like, okay, well, the like G-string part of the underwear is like already ripping. Like you can see the threads coming out, and like, so yeah, sometimes being able to buy things better quality, like you said, and being able to talk to somebody, giving them your exact measurements and stuff, and it might be more expensive. I mean, I'm going to say it's definitely more expensive than buying something from like Shein, let's say, but you also feel kind of nice. Like it's almost like when we get booked for a photo shoot, we're like super excited. So imagine how these people feel when you're buying like a nice outfit from them and they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like when we get a booking. Like I'm always excited when I get a booking. So it's like you're supporting somebody else with their work and something they're passionate about. And it's not necessarily bad for the environment. Like Shein, because it's not like mass production
yeah.
or just like fast fashion. Like some of these outfits are really cute. I remember getting a lingerie outfit. I think I've had it for like 5 or 6 years now, and it's one of my favorites, and I still wear it. And it wasn't cheap, but I bought it and I felt good buying it, and I was really like excited like at how well it fit me, and it didn't feel awkward, and it hasn't ripped yet. And yeah, so sometimes it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, the higher quality stuff that costs more is gonna last longer. Like my favorite swimsuit came from an independent designer that was like personally there at like this. I was doing a shoot, and then when the shoot ended, like the person who owned the mansion was like gonna have a party, so people were showing up early, and this gal showed up with like her rack of bikinis to like hand out to like hot chicks that were going to show up to the party, and she let me wear one, and it fit me perfect. And this is like this is over 10 years ago. This is like an 11-year-old swimsuit. I've washed it so many times. It has the same vibrant colors. It hasn't stretched out. It hasn't shrunk. It's still my favorite bikini 11 years later. They're called Montse, by the way. I'll link them in the show notes. But
Yeah, do.
yeah, so I'm like, that was the best swimsuit ever. The two-piece suit cost me like $80, but like it's still like I have all these other suits that people have handed to me that I'm like, I don't know where this is from, but like it's all right, you know. But like a good fitting bikini is like, you know, to die for.
Definitely. Hard to come by too sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I had another question that I was going to ask you. Okay, here it is. So one of the benefits of the love-hate relationship that we all have with Amazon is that if a photographer says, you know, I need to do a shoot with you in an outfit that is XYZ, and they describe something that is like very specific, like I want a sheer V-neck plunging like off-white tank top that like barely hangs off of your breasts, and it has to be semi-sheer. You're like, oh my God, where do I find that? If you don't have that specific thing and that's really what they want to shoot, like, how do you go about getting it? A lot of the time, anything that you're thinking of, you might be able to find on Amazon, which it obviously is a habit thing for me. I'm like, how do we get around this need to have such a super niche item?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's like you said, there is the convenience of Amazon and typing in exactly what you're looking for. Whereas if you go into like a shopping mall, let's say you might have to go through like 5 different stores and you still might not even find that specific outfit that the photographer proposed. So, but yeah, I'm like, I don't want to buy something for one shoot that I might need for this one shoot and I'm never going to need it again. So like the first thing I do usually is ask my sister, ask my mom, ask some friends like, hey, do you have anything in this description that maybe I can borrow? And then if they don't, then sometimes if I have time, like it depends, but I will go thrifting and see if I can find something. But I also will tell the photographer sometimes like, well, that's like really specific and I love the idea and everything, but if it's something that's not exactly in that description, is it okay? Like, can it be a little bit off? Does it have to be like a specific like pearl white color? Can it be off white? Like, so I'll try to maybe propose to them like, or tell them maybe some outfits that I already have that might be similar to that look, but not exactly.
Yeah.
So those are like little ways you could try to get around, like you said, going on Amazon and typing in exactly what you're looking for and getting it in like 48 hours. But
yeah,
I don't know. Do you have any other suggestions?
I will say that oftentimes when photographers have a specific request like this, it's not usually like a green tutu or something that's like off the wall. Usually it's some kind of staple, like a white tank top or like a black thong. You know, there's a lot of things that come up frequently in requests, like a long flowy item. I mean, I'm sure that you get similar requests, and all of us traveling freelance models get similar requests. Am I right? Like, I want a nude bra and panty, like a nude seamless bra and panty. So it would be advantageous for us as traveling freelance models to make sure that we have these staples and like variations of these staples to bring to shoots. So, you know, lacy black lingerie set is something that's really common. Obviously, you could probably get one for $12.99 that'll last you like, you know, 8 shoots before it starts coming apart. Or you could, you know, find something that you feel really good about wearing, that you know it came from a place of creativity from an artist that hand sewed it and keep it in your wardrobe for years and years. And every time you post a photo in that outfit, you can tag the designer and support them. So, I mean, that's how I feel about it. So I just
Yeah.
accumulate these things that I know are staples, and I make sure to bring my staples to all of my shoots. And like the one outfit that I have, that's my favorite outfit that I bring to every single shoot, and I honestly use it in like almost every shoot. Like if you look at my profile, you'll probably see it multiple times. I found it on Etsy, on a Etsy page that was dedicated to like vintage thrifting. And it's a long, sheer white nightgown that's like open in the front. Like you could button it closed, but it's also like a robe. It's sheer, flowy, and it's kind of like an off-white because it's been aged. So it's just that perfect, like vintagey, beautiful, flowy thing that just looks good everywhere. And it's literally coming apart and it still looks good everywhere. I'm in love
Oh,
with
I love
it. I
that.
call it my magic nightie.
I have some, it's true though, sometimes see certain pieces of clothing, like as they age, they almost look better. Like, I'm just like, oh, well, there's like a little hole or something there. But like, as the like white aged, it kind of turned into like an off-white or like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And having staples in your closet for us models is always really good because
Yeah.
I think we definitely, like most of us reuse things more than once. We don't just wear like a lingerie set. We're like, okay, well, I'll get rid of it because I used it for a shoot now. Like I reuse like, cause like you said, people will often ask like, oh, do you have like black lingerie with like maybe some pantyhose or like a garter belt or like, so yeah, I definitely have a lot. I mean, I have more than one set of black lingerie, but I reuse them. I don't go out and buy a new set every single time I'm doing a photo shoot. So like you said, there are things that get asked for a lot. So that's
Yeah.
definitely good. If you don't have it in your stuff and then you're thinking like, well, maybe this is something that yeah, like photographers have asked me for this a lot and I don't have it. So maybe I can allow myself to go and buy something because I probably will reuse it in other photo shoots and not just like buying something that you're going to use once and then never use again. Cause that has happened too, where photographers can be like really specific, like, oh, I want this like really great, like red gown with like sparkles all over. And you're just like, okay, that sounds great and all, but it's a
Yeah.
bit unrealistic to be able to find something at a reasonable price. And how often am I going to reuse that dress kind of thing? So yeah, so I
Right.
think even just telling them straight up, like, I'm like, I don't think that's going to be something that's easy for me to find. If you can find it, or like, I can maybe see if I can go thrift shopping, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to find that outfit or,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah. Also, like for everybody listening, like especially the other models that might be listening to this episode, if you have like good engagement on your social media and you are reasonably responsible, and it is possible to reach out to some of these independent lingerie or swimwear designers and ask, hey, I'm looking to support an independent artist. Would you be opening to doing some kind of a trade deal where you, as the content creator, provide like reels, imagery, like promoting their brand, a certain amount of posts, like, or, provide like advertising for their independent like lingerie company. Oftentimes people will give you a discount to provide that service so you can collaborate together, or sometimes they'll even give you some stuff for free. And
Yeah.
I've worked out deals like this with a good handful of independent lingerie designers, and it's definitely supported, the costs for me, and it's in turn supported them because their lingerie lasts so much longer than the cheap stuff. I just let them know every time I model in this outfit, I'm going to tag you like when I post the stuff. So beyond the original agreement that we make, like the, 6 posts and 3 reels or whatever it is, I'll
Yeah.
tag them. So like, you know,
I think that's cool because then you're also you're reusing what you've purchased many, many times, and then you're supporting them and encouraging people to buy from a company that makes good quality stuff that will last, and you don't just wear it like 2, 3 times and then you're ready to
yeah,
get rid of it because there's a tear in it or something. So
yeah. Yeah, so like when you think about buying ethical stuff, like it doesn't have to be breaking the bank. Like, sometimes you could get it for free, in exchange for putting in those work hours to make the promotional material. But, it's when you think about it, an item that's going to last you 6 months versus an item that's going to last you 6 years, like which one is worth more in the long run? Like,
Exactly, exactly. I'm all for like the pair of jeans that I've had since I'm 16, and they're like these little short shorts, and they still fit me to this day, and I still have them, and I'm like, yes, like that was a good purchase. I bought these I don't know how many years ago, and they still fit me, and I still wear them. So
yeah. Yeah. I am liking the aged look for certain things. Like I have a few different like white tank tops that have been cut so that they're sort of under boob ones. And the one that I like the best is the one that's the oldest and the most faded. The newer ones, they're not as see-through and they just don't come out as good on camera.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes the older stuff is better.
Yeah. I mean, if that's your vibe, like, everybody's got their vibe. Some people's vibe is fueled by the fast fashion industry, but we're just making this episode to kind of challenge that because part of the dynamic of why fast fashion becomes such a toxic cycle is because it's trend driven buying. It causes mindset of overconsumption. So you're buying all this extra stuff that you don't really need. Like maybe you're a shopaholic and it feels good to buy this stuff and it's cheap. And so it's like a dopamine hit when you get it. But just like there are repercussions to these industries. In summary, since I do got to be wrapping it up pretty soon, like
Yeah.
let me just like think about it. Like before you hit like checkout when you're shopaholicing, like let me just think about.
That's it. I don't remember if it was in the documentary I watched, but they said something like, add it to your cart and let it sit there for a few days. And if you decide like you're still living okay with that, or like let it sit there for a week. And if you still didn't really need it in that week that it sat in your like shopping cart online, then do you really need it? Like, is it really necessary?
Yeah.
Because I think definitely there's a lot of shopaholics out there. I think we all have, maybe not everyone, but I think most of us have some form of an addiction, and shopping can be one of them for some people. And shopping it can be like a stress reliever for some people. They come home from a hard day of work and they're like, oh yeah, I get to go online and buy like new stuff. And that's a little bit harder, I guess, because if it is like something that's giving you that dopamine and then it's maybe not the greatest way to get your dopamine, and maybe you can try to find another way and just ask yourself if like, do you really need that? Maybe get the dopamine off thinking like, ooh, this money's staying in my bank account and building some interest. Instead, I can give me dopamine. Saving money makes me really happy. Like anytime I can buy something like cheaper because I got it secondhand or used, or even for free because a friend wanted to give me their old stuff, like I'm super happy. So
yeah,
that makes my dopamine high.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Saving money, like you think that you're saving money by buying cheap stuff, but then it's not a good deal if you don't actually need it.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, J-Ban, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. I think we covered all the bases and hopefully are making an impact with this episode.
I hope so too. And I wanted to thank you again for asking me to come on here to talk about this, because it is something dear and close to my heart, and thrift shopping has always been a part of my life from the time I can remember. So if I can convince anybody else to be a thrifter or just find better ways of shopping and getting things that you might need, then I'm happy. That puts
Yeah, stick it to the man. You don't need to go to the big corporations for your stuff. Like, support fellow artists.